to order. We're here for consideration of H.R. 1904, the Southeast Arizona Land Exchange and Conservation Act of 2011. We're happy to welcome the distinguished chairman of the Committee on Natural Resources, the ranking member of the subcommittee, and the author of the legislation is before us. So let's begin with Chairman Hastings. Without objection, of course, any prepared statement that you have will appear in the record in its entirety, and we welcome your summary. And I should say that I looked at my schedule. I'm testifying before you tomorrow. Whether you want me there or
we don't have the same rules you have.
Yeah.
We have 5-minute rules.
Exactly. Well,
well, it's nice to be here. You've painted the place since I was here last, did you not?
yeah. Well, we were hoping you wouldn't notice.
Okay, all right. No, it's good. Well, thank you, members of the committee. I appreciate your holding a hearing on for consideration of H.R. 1904, which is sponsored by my colleague, Mr. Gosar. It has bipartisan support, I might add. His predecessor also sponsored like legislation. The bill passed out of Natural Resources Committee in July, and it authorizes a fair value exchange in southeast Arizona that would open up the third largest undeveloped copper resource in the world. The bill requires an equal exchange to ensure fair treatment for taxpayers and for the government. And the bill further requires that the cost of the land exchange be fully paid for by the mine developer. This project will create over 3,700 jobs, and it will contribute over $60 billion to the economy over the life of the project. And out of that would be $20 billion in revenue to the respective governments. The bill would also strengthen our national security by increasing U.S. copper production. Copper is a critical metal used in production of electronics, transportation, machinery, renewable energy, and other uses. And we are growing more and more reliant, unfortunately, on the use of our natural resources. And I think we have looked into that a great deal on my committee. And I think in the long term, it doesn't make sense for us to ignore the resources that we have in this country, whether we're talking about oil and gas or we're talking about minerals, because they're all a part of a strong economy. And in a world that is becoming increasingly dangerous, to have a reliance on foreign countries, some of which aren't necessarily nice to us, is I guess a nice way to say that, it doesn't make sense to me. And so this is one effort, a very good effort that's been championed by Mr. Gosar and others to be less reliant on copper. And as I mentioned in my statement, this is potentially the largest resource of copper in the world. So
Great.
With that, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Chairman, Mr. Grijalva.
Thank you very much, Chairman Dreyer, Ranking Member Slaughter, and members of the Rules Committee. I appreciate the opportunity to testify before you regarding a proposed rule for consideration of H.R. 1904, the Southeast Arizona Land Exchange and Conservation Act. Despite the regional title of this legislation, H.R. 1904 is an enormously controversial bill with national and even international ramifications. Among other issues, the legislation would trade away our public lands and resources to foreign mining corporations, intensify water shortages in the desert Southwest, destroy Native American sacred sites, and continue the abuse of American taxpayers authorized by the mining law of 1872. These are significant issues with national scope which have prevented this proposal from passing the House or Senate during the last 3 Congresses. Given this level of controversy and complexity, the House must engage in a full, open, and robust debate on the current version of this measure. Land exchanges are, by their very nature, difficult to access. Congress has created a process through which federal land management agencies can complete such exchanges, but only after ensuring that the interests of the American taxpayers has been well served. Legislation carving out special exemptions for specific land deals should be cause for concern because the only reason legislation is required is to waive existing protections for taxpayers or to the environment or both. That is the case here. The land exchange required by H.R. 1904 will make 2 foreign mining companies billions of dollars, destroy water quality and Native American sacred sites, and the deal will return nothing to the United States Treasury in the form of royalty payments. This proposal is consistent with other questionable plans put forth by the majority to allegedly create jobs. This bill will give away billions in public resources, permanently harm the environment, but employ very few people. Only an open rule will provide members adequate opportunity to address each of these serious concerns. I have joined with Mr. Garamendi to file an amendment seeking to increase the chances that, if completed, this land exchange will actually create jobs in our state of Arizona. I'm also aware that the ranking member of the Natural Resources Committee, Mr. Markey, has filed an amendment that would require these foreign mining giants to pay a small royalty on the billions of dollars worth of copper they stand to gain through H.R. 1904. Members should have the opportunity to vote on these and any other amendments filed in this legislation. With that, Mr. Chairman, I urge the committee to provide a fair and open process for consideration of H.R. 1904. It is vitally important to my home state, but also vitally important as precedent and for future considerations of our resource allocations for the nation, and it has international implications. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grijalva. We appreciate your being here. Mr. Gosar, the author of the legislation, congratulations.
Thank you. I would like to thank Chairman Dreyer and the committee for having me here today. The need for this land exchange legislation and the ensuing copper mine was one of the very first initiatives brought to my attention by the people of my district. Those folks are excited for the economic development and sustainable growth that this project will bring. I appreciate being given the time on the floor this week. H.R. 1904 would facilitate a land exchange that would bring into federal stewardship 5,500 acres of high-priority conservation lands in exchange for 2,600 acres of National Forest System land intermingled with private land and blanketed by unpatented mining claims in the Copper Triangle in southeastern Arizona. The copper located on this land transferred in H.R. 1904 is the richest copper body ore in North America ever discovered. The United States currently imports over 30% of the country's copper demand. This project could produce enough copper equal to 25% of our demand, contributing significantly to the United States' energy independence. Times are tough in my district. The unemployment rates in Pinal and Gila County, the two most directly affected counties, sit above 10%. The legislation has overwhelmingly bipartisan support on the ground in Arizona because it provides a huge stimulus to the United States and Arizona economies without an infusion of any federal funds. Today, more than 500 employees and contractors are at work in Arizona on this very project as they prepare for us to take action on this bill. Upon passage, the private company will be able to employ 3,000 workers during this 6-year construction period. Ultimately, the project will support over 3,700 jobs, providing for $220 million in annual wages over the life of the project. The average wage for all U.S. miners is $67,719 compared to $46,451 for all U.S. workers. In Arizona, the average mining wage is $70,473 compared to $42,858 for all other workers. Most of the jobs directly tied to this project expect to pay over $80,000. These are good-paying jobs. The total economic impact of this project is estimated to be over $61.4 billion, nearly $1 billion per year, and another $19 billion in federal, state, county, and local tax revenue. That includes $14 billion in federal tax revenue. This bill is not only a jobs bill, it's a conservation bill. In exchange for opening up the third largest undeveloped copper resource in the world, the federal government acquires 5,500 acres of high-priority ecological conservation lands containing endangered species, sensitive ecosystems, recreational sites, and historical landmarks. For example, the 7B Ranch located in Pinal County, Arizona, is 3,073 acres within the San Pedro ecosystem, designated by the Nature Conservancy as one of the last great places on Earth. Home to a free-flowing artesian spring-fed wetland populated by lowland leopard frogs, nesting birds, and native fish. In addition, this parcel is recognized by BirdLife International as an important bird area. The conveyance of this land would be an important addition to the San Pedro Riparian National Conservation Area. Many of the lands being conveyed are landlocked by federal land. The consolidation of the federal lands will also contribute to better, more economical, efficiently federal land management. Through this legislation, we can preserve lands that advance the important public objectives of protecting wildlife habitat, cultural and historical resources, the watershed, recreational sites, and aesthetic values, while enabling an important mining project to go forward that will generate economic and employment opportunities for the state and local residents. Thank you very much for the time. I will submit a longer statement for the record. I'm happy to take any questions in front of this committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gosar, and congratulations again, and thanks to all of you for your testimony. I'm going to recommend a total of 4 amendments have been submitted to the committee, and I'm going to recommend that all of the amendments be made in order. The amendment that Mr. Grijalva has with my California colleague, Mr. Garamendi, and the amendment that has been proposed by the ranking member, Mr. Markey. So I'm going to, Mr. Grijalva recommended the committee. They have more votes than I. They could overrule me on this thing, and so you might want to work the Democrats and see if they will vote in support of making your amendment in order. I suspect Ms. Slaughter, I'm going to speak for her, and I think she's supportive.
We'd like to go even further, Mr. Chairman, call for an open rule.
I understand that, but I suspect you won't oppose my request to make Mr. Grijalva's amendment in order. Yeah, but I suspect you won't oppose making Mr. Grijalva's amendment in order.
Well, to tell you the truth, there's no clamor in the state of New York to give away billions of dollars in copper to a foreign country. We just don't really take to that much up where I live. Thank you very much.
So should I assume from that you're going to oppose making Mr. Grijalva's amendment in order?
I oppose this whole bill, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I understand that. So, gentlemen, thanks very much. Appreciate that. And Ms. Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't really have any questions. I appreciate the 3 gentlemen being here and presenting the information to us, and I agree with Chairman Hastings that, and I think the awareness of many Americans has been raised in the last few years about the problem of our dependency on other countries for minerals. It really has become much more widespread information than it used to be, and so I appreciate your doing this, and I appreciate Mr. Gosar bringing the bill. I'm glad to know that it has bipartisan support and was introduced in the past by a Democrat member, and appreciate our being able to support a bipartisan bill.
Mr. Markey has arrived, and let me just say we've gone through the testimony, and we're in the question session here. If you have a statement, we're happy to put it in the record. If you'd like to just briefly offer a comment.
If I may, yes, and I can do it very briefly.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, thank you so much. The Natural Resources Committee has legislation.
By the way, you should know that I've just recommended to the committee that we make in order your amendment.
Great.
So I just want you to know that.
Thank you.
And Mr.
And I
Grijalva's as
recommended
well.
an open rule, Mr. Markey.
Right.
That's even greater, and
Yeah.
the bidding is still open here.
Right.
Not really.
Right.
No,
you hear what
Well,
Mr. Bishop said?
I thank you. I'm sure that Mr. Grijalva has summarized well the points on the minority and the natural resources committee. So I'll just let it stand.
Thank you. Ms. Slaughter.
Mr. Chairman, first let me ask unanimous consent to put in the record the statement of the Sierra Club and its 1.4 million supporters and the National Congress of American Indians.
Without objection, that'll appear in the record.
Thank you. I have always objected. This is not the first time, Mr. Gosar, that this has come up. The mining laws that we operate under pretty much were signed by Ulysses S. Grant. Royalties we don't seem to care about. Everybody admits that the copper in this national park is worth billions of dollars. But we're not going to ask a cent in royalties for it. We're taking national park, and because we're getting some other land, we think that's something of a fair deal. What I'd be worried about, at first, is what's going to do to the water supply in your state. They'll let mining there. What do you think about this? I understand it could destroy the water for a city the size of Tempe.
Absolutely not. In fact, the company has already banked 12 years more than half of the allocations needed in water reserves. And in water banking, that's how our water system is in Arizona. We're very diverse. We water bank. We actually use a banking system within water systems. And
how long does that bank last?
Well, we've got 12 years banked up, and this is a 20-year mine operation is what it looks like.
So you think all water is going to be fine from this?
From all geological, from what we've seen, everything has been allocated and looked at fine.
Well, also, these companies, as I understand it, do robotic mining. That's their claim to fame. I'm not clear on why you think that there will be a lot of jobs created.
You can already see. That's why I went through the testimony to show to you exactly what they've invested into there. There's already 500 people, and there'll be much more that will be hired accordingly. And these are great-paying jobs. I mean, so these are exactly what we see as proof.
And this has been under work, I think, for a number of years, a decade anyway, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And Congress has always turned it down.
Well, for a
President
number of
Eisenhower decided while he was president, wisely, I think, that this should not be mined. Correctly?
No, I disagree with that. I mean, this is an allocation that doesn't have anything to do with the mines or the mining acts in regards to the Native Americans.
Well, let me tell you what I find strange.
Okay?
That there's no review under the Forest Service, although the Mining Act requires that happen. And you're not letting them look at it from NEPA. Why is that?
Well, because in land exchanges prior to, in land exchanges, that's not been a necessary aspect.
But
the other second part is I'm tired of the American taxpayer having to pay for these NEPAs. This should be the company's aspect, and the NEPA will be paid for by the company. No mining can go forward unless a NEPA is done. So these are all the rules still apply.
that's not my understanding. Is that your understanding, Mr. Guevara?
No, I think without, thank you.
Yes.
Without going through the process, the NEPA process as
Beforehand,
should be done
before we make
beforehand,
yes.
Then, we always deal with unintended consequences. The NEPA process is in place to let us look at those consequences and mitigate and prepare for them. Not knowing what those consequences would be, you're sort of, you're playing in the dark.
Mr. Markey, you have any comment on that?
I think that's a good summary in almost every piece of legislation that is significant that we're passing out of the committee this year. There is at least a partial waiver, in many instances a total waiver of NEPA, which is the Constitution of environmental law in the United States.
Well, as a member of Congress and I can't understand why the United States would let them mine copper worth billions of dollars without a single royalty dollar. Why would we do that?
Well, let me respond.
What's in that for us?
Let me
why do we give away our resources?
Let me respond to this NEPA thing just to put things in perspective. Now, understand, and by the way, you're talking about an old law. I just remind you that our the basic law of our land goes way back before George Washington and the Constitution. I thought I'd put that in perspective.
Maybe we ought to upgrade that.
Yeah, but I won't go there. But part of our Constitution is a division of powers. We are the Congress, and we make the laws. The executive branch carries out the laws. We have passed in the past an environmental policy that deals with projects that are on various lands, whatever case may be. NEPA should not, in my point of view, apply to a land exchange because Congress is directing the land exchange. Why should we let the bureaucracy be part of the process of a land exchange that the Congress puts in place? Now, as to the project, that goes fully through the NEPA process. All we're talking about here is a land exchange. And if Congress directs a land exchange, why should there be a NEPA process to potentially slow that down?
Well, why in the world would Congress giving away billions of dollars worth of copper? I mean, that's the question that comes back.
Giving away,
goodness sake, it's going to go back to the United States.
It's going to be used in wherever copper is used. I don't know about your part of the country.
Well, you have some reason to believe it's all going to stay here?
Well, no, listen, I'm a free trader, like the chairman of the Rules Committee is.
So why would they just take our copper and go elsewhere?
I think that makes us wealthier by selling assets that we may have.
China's part owner of this, isn't that correct? China has a percentage of this company.
I think what you need to do is, if you have some concerns like that, you ought to have a Mining Act aspect of changing the 1872 Mining Act.
Love to do it.
And then I would suggest that that's what happens. You don't pick and choose winners and losers out of this issue. And actually, to be honest with your compensation, this is the first time in which an assessed value, anything over assessed value, the company will actually pay back stuff to the federal government after assessed value. This is the first time that this has ever occurred here.
We just had one we've had one this year to do copper mining, or was it uranium mining at the Grand Canyon that was not accepted. And certainly the fact that the native tribes can't even weigh in until after this is over. This is land they've occupied for a millennia.
I actually disagree.
And we didn't even ask them.
This has actually been put forward by 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans at numerous attempts, exhaustive in talking with the native tribes. And they refused to even talk about the discussion. And part of a government-to-government relationship is having an open dialogue with not only governments but businesses associated. And so I can't help it if they don't take the responsibility to step forward and have that honest discussion.
Mr. Grover, you want to speak?
Just 2 points, I think, not for clarification, but just 2 points. The native nations in Arizona, and they're all in opposition. The Congress is in opposition. The issue with government to government is their relationship with the federal government.
How does the state of Arizona feel about it, Mr. Carver?
I think that the urgency for jobs has driven a lot of emotion, saying this is going to be the panacea, the silver bullet that takes Arizona out of its economic problems. But the fact remains that Rio Tinto, the parent company of Resolution Copper, when it first talked about this in 2004, it reported in newspapers it was going to create 450 jobs. Then those predictions skyrocketed over the years to 1,200. Now we're at 6,000. And it's impossible to tell what these numbers are because we have not required a mining plan of operation to be submitted in order to be able to substantiate what is really going to happen. And the tribes have said consistently, if I may, that they were willing to do a government-to-government consultation on this issue, but they deal with the federal government. They don't deal with Resolution Copper. They don't deal with any other entity. The relationship constitutionally is with the United States government. That has been their point of contention from the beginning, and they have said repeatedly, we are not negotiating with the mining company. We negotiate with the government.
All right. We don't have anything from the administration. I don't know if it's on the way or not, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bishop.
Can I just ask a couple of questions because I'm confused at Ms. Slaughter's talking points that have been given out to her. First of all, this is a jobs bill. Mr. Hastings, has your committee presented other jobs bills to us?
As a matter of fact, we have. We have spent a great deal of time on jobs bills that relates to the Gulf of Mexico and specifically the Outer Continental Shelf. We've taken up jobs bills as it relates to renewable energy on public lands. All of those things have come out of our committee and generally on a bipartisan basis. So yes, because our jurisdiction is on federal lands and the greatest potential for energy development, mineral development lies on federal lands, we've tried to be as proactive as we possibly can in that area and have been successful, as I say, on a bipartisan basis.
Mr. Gosar, the gentlelady from New York asked you the question of whether Arizona is supportive of this proposal. Has the governor or the Arizona Chamber of Commerce or anyone else in Arizona?
There's a whole list of people, even the manufacturers across this country, the chamber, the state is very in favor of this. They don't believe it's a panacea, but they do believe it's a stimulus in the right direction because it doesn't use any federal funds. In fact, what it does is it utilizes private funds.
What about the mayor of Superior, which is the closest community?
He's absolutely in favor.
Did he come here and testify to this bill?
Yes, he did, as well as a former chairman and councilman from the San Carlos Apache tribe as well. So it's not unified in the San Carlos review to this mine.
Mr. Hastings, I think we're nice enough to say that this is a twofold process. There's the land transfer, then there's the actual development of the mining industry. Right. And you said that the NEPA process, it seems to be redundant if you do a NEPA for the land transfer, especially when you do it again. Answer this again. Is NEPA required before this is ever developed?
Absolutely. So when the mine goes forward, NEPA would be required. Absolutely.
When the two Democrats in past sessions have introduced this bill, was NEPA required then?
I don't know off the top of my hand, but I can Ed, they did.
I think it's
the same as past legislation. So to the extent that requirement would have been the same as in past Congresses.
Well, I don't want to bicker with you, but actually in the past legislation, a rock climbing wall was given to the state of Arizona. It's not in this particular bill, but NEPA, being sarcastic, I'm sorry. NEPA was in all of those. I admit that. I appreciate it. One of the things, and this is kind of cumbersome for me, because I've been complaining the federal government has too much land. We already own a third of this country. Apparently under this one, you're going to give for development of the jobs, you know, the 3,700 direct and indirect jobs, the 3,000 in addition to that just for the construction, plus the 500 who are already there. You're going to give or allow this company to buy 1,400 acres, roughly, of land. but you're going to give the government 5,300. The government's getting almost twice as much. It's true, Superior City will get 30 acres for their cemetery, but the government is actually going to gain more land in this than they would the other way around. That kind of hurts my feelings, I have to admit. You're being too generous.
Well, there is a school of thought on that.
Thank you. I'll yield back.
Thank you. I just would just want to associate myself with some of the concerns our ranking member has expressed. And just, I mean, you're touting this as a jobs bill. The claim that this mine will create thousands of jobs, I think, is highly suspect, given that the foreign mining giants behind the plan are pioneers in automation and remote control of mining operations. And I think any jobs that would be created would be years in the future. So I think the point Mr. Slaughter was trying to make is that, I think if this is Republican leadership's idea of a jobs plan, we're in real trouble. And I think it's fair to say, based on the testimony here today, that there's some controversy over this bill. I mean, people have obviously different opinions, and so I go back to what Mr. Slaughter said. I would hope that Mr. Chairman and Mr. Gosar, that you would both be in favor of an open rule. I mean, we were notified, members were notified of this bill last week. I mean, that's all, I guess, within the time frame that the rules set out, but we were notified last Tuesday when we were in recess. And I'm looking at the amendments that have been offered, that all been offered by people on the Resources Committee. I think it's a safe bet that the vast majority of members probably had no idea this was coming up until they got in their office today, or when they arrive here before votes. So given the fact that there's controversy over this bill, given the fact that members were notified of this bill coming up when they were in recess, I think it's only fair. And again, I remember Mr. Hastings, you were being up here when we were in the majority, asking for open rules on bills like this. I would hope that we would all agree that this should be an open rule, and I'd be interested in hearing your opinion on that.
I always have found, since in the time that I had the privilege of serving on this committee, that there's a great deal of wisdom in this committee. And they make the proper determination as to what a rule will look like.
You didn't think you were in charge?
Well, but I remember too. You were complaining about the time frame, which of course is within the rules. I remember very specifically when I was on this committee in the minority, coming in here at 2 o'clock in the morning and seeing a bill that is this large, and we're frantically going through the bill trying to figure out what's in it. Now, I remember that. That was hardly an open process.
I think here's an
opportunity. Give me a chance. Let me an opportunity
for an open rule. And why can't we have an open? Why won't you come out for an open rule on this?
Well, I think a structured rule, given the fact that there were 4 amendments that were made in order. I don't know if there's any more than that.
And
we'll make them all in order.
Resources Committee. And so you are not for an open rule. Are you for an open rule, Mr. Gosar?
I stand with my chairman.
Mr. Grijalva?
I think an open rule, given the timeline, given the complexity of this issue and the controversy surrounding this issue, all members should be given an opportunity to weigh in and to have an opportunity to deal with this question.
Mr. Markey?
I agree with Mr. Grijalva.
Again, I will offer an open rule here, and hopefully, we'll enough friends on my other side will join with us and we'll prevail. But again, I mean, I think this is a serious issues are raised in this bill that a lot of members will have no clue about until they get here today. And I would think, out of fairness, we'd have an open rule. I yield back my time.
Mr. Nugent.
Mr. Gosar, there's a question about water.
You want to turn your microphone on there so that the world and your wife can have it?
Rarely do I get an opportunity to talk, but we're glad to be here today. Reference to environmental concerns. Does this bill cover or protect environmental concerns as it relates to, let's say, the withdrawal of the ore and trailings and water or anything else?
There are no rules that this is not subjective to in the Mining Act. So it has to undergo all rules that are subjective across the board. There's nothing it exempted from.
Nothing?
Nothing.
Now, Mr. Hastings, when you served on the Rules Committee, do you recall in the 111th Congress, did you serve then on the rules?
See, that, which Congress are we in now?
112.
No, I was in the 110th.
Okay. Are you aware of what, under 111th Congress, how many open modified rules there were?
No, there were no open rules. To my knowledge, there are open rules that we did not classify as open rules.
How
We had a
many
pre-printing requirement.
Absolutely.
What's an open modified rule?
Well, open rule. But when you have a pre-printing requirement.
Yeah, but this is not an open.
This is a structured rule,
Right.
I understand.
Okay, thank you.
I understand.
No, the bottom line was, and that's why I made the point there to Mr. McGovern when he was lamenting about our following the rules in this Congress, having plenty of time to say when the Rules Committee is going to have a hearing. I remember coming in here, as I mentioned before, in the middle of the night with huge bills, and we're frankly trying to go through those bills to find out what is in there. That was hardly an open way. And then, to make even matters worse, we were on the floor that same day. In fact, that happened, if my memory serves me correct, in the last Congress with cap and trade. I think the amendment that was offered, I wasn't on the Rules Committee then, but I think the amendment that was offered at 2 or 3 in the morning, and we were on the floor at 11 o'clock that day. Hardly time for people to have an opportunity to look at it. So, sometimes the crocodile tears we hear on the other side is incredible.
I appreciate your service on the Rules Committee, but Mr. Gosar, I appreciate your bill, and particularly in regards to creating jobs in an area that jobs need to be created. It says a lot about the support that you received within the state, particularly from local and state officials in regards to moving forward with this bill, because it is truly a jobs bill. Thank you.
Scott. Mr. Webster.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman, to either Dr. Gosar or Chairman Hastings. Isn't copper the key component to passive hot water heating devices?
I don't know all the applications for copper, but I do know copper is an integral part of what you talked about heating when we're going into the winter season. But it's also a very important component, as I understand it, to the high technology industry. And if we want to continue to be a leader in the world in developing high technology and the machinery that goes along with that, I think it's in our best interest to have a domestic supply of copper, and the potential here with this mine is very, very high. So the short answer is that there is a wide variety of copper. I might add, too, I know it happens in my part of the country because I come from agriculture country. There is a lot of incidents where copper is being stolen by people and sold on the black market because of the demand for it. I think the best way to mitigate all that is to mine our own copper.
One other question, or one other statement. I would say copper is certainly a key component to passive hot water heating. So 35% of a person's utility bill in Florida is hot water. It's done by either nuclear or coal-fired power plants. If there were cheaper copper and if there were more passive hot water systems, I would say this bill would provide it, and you end up with an environmentally positive bill, because you're going to be allowing not only the technology you're talking about to be developed, but also just a simple hot water heating system at a low cost that will take many, many people off of using either natural gas or electricity to heat their water.
Gentlemen, thank you all very much for being here.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, just to put into the record communication to Mr. Markey, ranking member, a copy to our chairman on the Natural Resources Committee from USDA, expressing their opposition to a NEPA study after the land exchange and concerned about the San Carlos Apache tribe.
Without objection, the letter will appear in the record. Gentlemen, thank you all very much for being here, and we look forward to consideration of the measure on the House floor. That will conclude the hearing for consideration for HR 1904, and I think we've had a discussion about what the rule consists of, but we'll recognize the gentlewoman from Grandfather Community with a motion that will actually ratify it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee report a structured rule for consideration of H.R. 1904, the Southeast Arizona Land Exchange and Conservation Act of 2011. The rule provides 1 hour of general debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Natural Resources. The rule provides that the amendment in the nature of a substitute recommended by the Committee on Natural Resources, now printed in the bill, modified by the amendment printed in Part A of the report of the Committee on Rules, accompanying the resolution, shall be considered as an original bill for the purpose of amendment and shall be considered as read. The rule waives all points of order against the committee amendments in the nature of a substitute as modified. The rule makes in order only those further amendments printed in Part B of the report accompanying the resolution. Each such amendment may be offered only in the order printed in the report, may be offered only by a member designated in the report, shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and an opponent, shall not be subject to amendment, and shall not be subject to a demand for division of the question. The rule waives all points of order against the amendments printed in Part B of the report. Finally, the rule provides one motion to recommit with or without instruction.
You've heard the motion of the gentlewoman. Let me just explain again that my staff was here last week and anticipating this and other legislation that we might have had brought forward, and this is in full compliance with the rules of the House. We're making in order the amendments offered by both the ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Markey, the subcommittee ranking member, Mr. Grijalva, who's joining with my California colleague, Mr. Garamendi, and also, so basically 3 Democratic amendments and then the amendment that is offered by the chairman of the committee. And so I would urge my colleagues to support this rule. Any amendments? Mr. McGovern.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the committee report an open rule for consideration of H.R. 1904. And I'll just repeat that I move the committee report an open rule for consideration of
clarifying that.
H.R. 1904 so that I move that the committee report an open rule for consideration of 1904 so that all members have the opportunity to offer amendments to this bill.
Thank you very much. Vote occurs on the McGovern amendment. Those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Pay the chair the noes have it.
Ask for roll call.
Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Sessions. Ms. Fox. No. Ms. Fox, no. Mr. Bishop. No. Mr. Bishop, no. Mr. Woodall. Mr. Nugent. No. Mr. Nugent, no. Mr. Scott. No. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Webster. No. Mr. Webster, no. Ms. Slaughter. Aye. Ms. Slaughter, aye. Mr. McGovern.
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Mr. Chairman.
Well, you want Mr. Hastings or Mr. No, these two
are Mr. Hastings, Mr. Polis, Mr. Chairman.
No. Clerk, report the total.
2 yeas, 6 nays.
And the motion is not agreed to. There are further amendments. Not the vote occurs. The motion of the gentlewoman from grandfather committee. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. Pay the chair the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. And this will be managed for the majority by Mr. Bishop. And Mr. McGovern, we're going to be meeting at 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon on the 3% withholding measure, and I hope everyone had a wonderful week. I know Mrs. Slaughter did. It's scheduled to snow in upstate New York day after tomorrow or on Thursday. So we'll watch that from the warmth of Washington, D.C. Without objection, committee stands adjourned.